Border agents scan a sea of unfamiliar faces, dozens from regions they never used to see in such numbers. Families from South America, young men from Asia, a rising influx that the system was never built to handle. Why now? Why these people? The answer isn't what most headlines want you to believe. Yes, some countries are sending undocumented immigrants into the US, but one nation in particular is climbing that list rapidly, and it's probably not the one you expect. Could your town already be feeling the effects? Because over the next few minutes, we're counting down the top 10 countries of origin, and number 3 is guaranteed to shock you. Number 10. Mexico. Think the story of illegal immigration is changing? Not so fast. While Mexico might not dominate the headlines like it once did, it still leads the pack with more undocumented immigrants in the US than any other nation. Why does that still matter? Because despite popular belief that the wave has slowed, over 5.5 million Mexicans are living in the US without legal status, and that number is climbing again. What's behind this surge? Cartel violence, economic turmoil, and decades of broken promises around reform. In many parts of Mexico, staying is no longer a decision, it's a death sentence. And the journey north? It's becoming longer, riskier, and more expensive. Still, people are making it daily. This isn't just about border towns. These migrants are shaping classrooms, labor markets, and entire communities far beyond the Southwest. If you think Mexico's role is over, think again. It's not closing a chapter, it's starting a new one. Number 9. Guatemala. Children alone in deserts. Whole villages disappearing overnight. Families selling everything for one desperate chance to cross. Guatemala isn't just sending migrants, it's bleeding people. Why? A perfect storm of gang brutality, government corruption, and paralyzing poverty. In some areas, teens face two options: join the gangs or run. Over 1.4 million Guatemalans are now in the US without papers. Many don't speak Spanish, only indigenous languages. Many are underage. Most arrive with nothing but a will to survive. And they're not just in border states. They're reshaping meatpacking towns in the Midwest and farming hubs in the South. Yet hardly anyone's talking about it. Before we go further, hit that subscribe button. We're here to bring you the stories that mainstream media won't. Number 8. Honduras. How far would you go to escape a life with no hope? For hundreds of thousands of Hondurans, the answer is, as far as humanly possible. On foot through jungles, over rivers, and past cartel checkpoints, just to reach the US, and the numbers are surging. Over 1 million Hondurans now live in America without legal status, more than double the number just 20 years ago. But this crisis isn't just about being poor. It's about surviving daily threats, extortion, and violence in cities like San Pedro Sula and Tegucigalpa. Most aren't chasing dreams, they're running from nightmares. Some are kids. Some are pregnant. Some never survive the trip. Those who do, many end up in rural towns, meat plants, or construction zones. They take the toughest jobs for the lowest wages, propping up industries that depend on their labor. Yet they live in fear of ICE and deportation. And the effects ripple outward. Overloaded hospitals. Schools scrambling for translators. Economies quietly leaning on a labor force with no protections. Is Honduras sending migrants? Absolutely. But the deeper question is, why is no one fixing what's broken at the source? As corruption, gang violence, and climate disasters squeeze the country, the exodus won't stop, it'll accelerate. Number 7. El Salvador. How do you heal a country where gangs ruled entire cities and police were too afraid to step in? For decades, El Salvador was one of the deadliest places in the world. Families lived in constant fear. Young people vanished for saying no to a gang. Businesses paid criminals just to stay open. That terror drove waves of people north. Today, over 1.78 million Salvadorans live in the US without legal status, one of the largest undocumented groups here. But things are changing back home. The Salvadoran government has launched an aggressive anti-gang campaign. Mass arrests, military patrols, full prisons. Some say it's working. Others say it's crossing serious human rights lines. So why are people still leaving? Because the fear may have faded, but the poverty hasn't. The economy is weak. Jobs are scarce. Corruption still festers. Even with safer streets, hope remains in short supply. Migrants make the long trek north with little more than determination and dreams. Most have no visa, no safety net, no real plan, just the desire to find work and send money back home. Here in the US, Salvadorans often go unseen, but they're everywhere. Roofing houses. Cooking in restaurants. Farming fields. They help build this country, while staying in its shadows. Is this a crisis or a consequence? El Salvador's story isn't just local, it's a global red flag. Take a moment to hit that subscribe button if you haven't yet. These are the stories most outlets never touch, and what's coming next might surprise you even more. Number 6. Venezuela. What happens when one of the richest nations in Latin America becomes one of the poorest on earth, almost overnight? Venezuela didn't fall gradually. It collapsed. Once flush with oil wealth, it now has a currency worth less than paper. Shelves sit empty. Power cuts last for days. More than 8 million people have fled, a displacement crisis on a historic scale. While most fled to nearby countries, over 500,000 Venezuelans have now reached the US, many without legal documents. And they're not taking the usual routes. They're flying into Central America, walking the deadly Darien Gap, and crossing multiple borders to find a shred of safety. Many are professionals, doctors, engineers, teachers. Some arrive with resumes. Others with nothing but a child in their arms. Why did they leave? Because of a toxic mix of hyperinflation, food scarcity, repression, and a crumbling healthcare system. People who once owned homes now sleep in tents. Former business owners sell candy in the streets just to eat. This isn't just poverty, they're fleeing the wreckage of a broken nation. In the US, Venezuelans are appearing in cities like Miami, Houston, and Chicago, filing asylum claims and hoping for stability. But with the courts overwhelmed and options limited, many will spend years waiting in limbo. And yet, they keep coming, because staying behind means surrendering to collapse. Hunger and danger. Is this the dawn of a new migration surge or simply the fallout of a silent catastrophe? What unfolded in Venezuela is no longer confined to its borders, it's becoming part of the American narrative. At number 5, Colombia. How does a nation celebrated for its vibrant cities, breathtaking mountains, and world-famous coffee find itself among the top contributors to unauthorized migration into the US? Colombia's turmoil didn't erupt overnight. It has been simmering for years, and now it's spilling over. Armed factions are gaining ground once again, drug smuggling routes are evolving, rural communities remain trapped in violence, and cities are collapsing under economic weight. Inflation is rising fast, employment is vanishing, and for the most vulnerable, hope is fading. Today, over 170,000 Colombians are residing in the US without legal authorization, and that number is rising rapidly. Why? Because for many, the basic promise of security and opportunity has vanished back home. People are escaping gang rule, political instability, and economic collapse. And here's the catch. Many fleeing aren't the poorest, they're educators, healthcare workers, and skilled professionals. They aren't just running from fear, they're running from paralysis. So how are they getting here? Thousands are flying into Central America and then trekking north in migrant caravans. Others are crossing into the US illegally via Arizona, California, and Texas, many for the first time. In fact, Colombian border apprehensions surged by over 400% in a single year. Once inside the US, many head to states like Florida, New Jersey, and New York, areas with long-standing but modest Colombian communities that are now being stretched to their limits, placing pressure on local services, schools, and housing. Colombia's story goes beyond coffee and cartel myths. It's a nation quietly unraveling, and people are leaving not by choice, but because staying means no future at all. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button. It helps us bring you underreported stories that the mainstream media overlooks. The countries still to come are shaking the U.S. immigration system to its core. Number 4. The Philippines. What happens when a country becomes one of the world's largest exporters of people? The Philippines has turned migration into a survival strategy, sending nurses, caregivers, laborers, and sailors across the globe. For decades, Filipinos haven't left home chasing luxury, but out of sheer necessity. It's so common that many children grow up with one or even both parents working abroad. And now, increasing numbers are finding their way to the United States, both legally and through unauthorized means. Here's a truth most people don't hear. More than 300,000 undocumented Filipinos currently live in the U.S., and that number is quietly ticking upward, even as immigration laws grow stricter. Why? Because wages at home remain stagnant while living costs continue to soar. Youth unemployment is high. And while Filipino workers send back over $30 billion annually in remittances, it comes at a painful price: broken families, exploitation, and uncertain legal status. The real shift is happening in the shadows. Many Filipinos are overstaying visas, using forged documents, or entering through temporary work programs with the aim of staying permanently. Once in the U.S., they blend in almost seamlessly. Fluent in English, adaptable, and often working in essential but invisible roles, they remain largely unnoticed, but they're everywhere: hospitals, hotels, kitchens, call centers, elder care facilities. America depends on them more than it realizes. Yet many live undocumented, uninsured, and unprotected. Each month, they sacrifice to send money back home, choosing hardship so their loved ones don't have to. Is this immigration, or quiet sacrifice? Because for countless Filipinos, this journey isn't about dreams of luxury. It's about duty, survival, and often, sheer desperation. The Philippines may not make headlines like others on this list, but its silent migration wave is reshaping America's workforce, and leaving lasting wounds on the country they leave behind. And the next country? Its migration numbers are climbing so fast, the U.S. system can barely keep up. Number 3. Brazil. What if the land of Carnival, the Amazon, and megacities is now powering one of the fastest growing undocumented populations in the U.S.? Brazil's story is no longer just music and football. It's a nation where thousands are gambling everything to escape. Why? Because beneath Brazil's colorful surface lies deep-rooted social and economic instability. Inflation is surging. Joblessness is widespread. Violent crime plagues major cities. Over 400,000 Brazilians are now living in the U.S. without legal permission, a figure that has nearly doubled in just 5 years. Many are taking on jobs in construction, cleaning, landscaping, and caregiving, roles many Americans are reluctant to fill. So what's causing this mass movement? Years of government upheaval, corruption, and economic mismanagement have crushed confidence in Brazil's future. Despite its abundant resources and industrial power, inequality is growing, pushing people to make desperate choices. Though Brazil hasn't historically been a top-sending country, its migrants are now arriving in cities from California to Florida. Their impact is quiet but significant. Brazilian immigrants contribute billions to the U.S. economy, but most remain in the shadows, undocumented, at risk of abuse, and stuck in a legal gray zone. Their remittances are keeping families afloat back home. Is Brazil poised to become a major source of undocumented migrants? And what if its crisis deepens? Brazil's invisible migration wave is already changing American towns, and it might just be getting started. Now, before we reveal the final 2 countries, make sure to hit that subscribe button. The stories you're about to hear are ones the mainstream still isn't prepared for. Number 2. Ecuador. What makes thousands abandon a country known for its natural beauty and cultural richness and risk everything to reach U.S. soil? Ecuador's quiet collapse isn't making global headlines, but the crisis is real. Once considered a stable force in South America, Ecuador now faces economic freefall, surging violence, and political upheaval. For many, daily life feels like skating on thin ice. The number of Ecuadorians caught trying to cross into the U.S. has exploded in recent years, with over 120,000 now living undocumented in the country. And they aren't just from the countryside, they're from cities where job prospects have vanished. So what's pushing them out? Economic decline driven by corruption, COVID fallout, and a wave of violent crime has left little hope. Basic services like education and healthcare are buckling under the pressure. Young people, in particular, see no clear future in staying. Many Ecuadorians make their way through Mexico, joining others on treacherous treks across rivers and deserts. Once inside the U.S., they often find shelter in New York, New Jersey, or Florida, where small Ecuadorian enclaves offer familiarity but not much support. Could Ecuador's migrant waves soon overwhelm U.S. border resources and local communities? What happens if its instability worsens? Much like a town tied to a dying industry, Ecuador's future, and the fate of those fleeing it, hangs by a thread. Number 1. India. What's driving the growing number of people leaving one of the world's fastest-growing economies to enter the United States without authorization? It's a question that catches many off guard, especially when India is often associated with booming tech industries and bustling cities. But beneath this rapid development lies a more complicated truth, one that's pushing many to seek new lives far from home. With a population exceeding 1.4 billion, India is a giant, but the benefits of its economic growth are not reaching everyone. Millions of people struggle with underemployment, stagnant wages, and the rising cost of living. The gap between the wealthy and the poor continues to expand, and in rural areas, where hundreds of millions reside, access to education and job opportunities remains limited. At present, over 400,000 undocumented Indians live in the United States, a figure that has been steadily increasing. Many initially enter legally on student or work visas but end up overstaying. Others now attempt the dangerous journey through Mexico, a route that was once rare for Indian migrants. Why take such risks? For many, it's the hope of better wages, educational opportunities, and a future that feels increasingly out of reach back home. The fierce competition for jobs in Indian cities and the responsibility of supporting extended families drive individuals to make incredibly tough decisions. Once in the U.S., these migrants often find work in technology, hospitality, and small businesses. They quietly contribute to the economy, yet remain in the shadows, living in legal limbo, exposed to exploitation, and uncertain about what lies ahead. Could this growing Indian migration wave reshape the broader landscape of undocumented immigration? And what happens if India's internal economic and social pressures keep intensifying? Much like Windsor's dependence on a single fragile industry, India's rapid development has left millions behind, prompting them to seek a fresh start elsewhere. The stories behind these migration waves aren't just statistics, they reflect human struggles, sacrifices, and dreams. If you found this insight valuable, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Stick around for more in-depth explorations of the forces reshaping our world, because understanding is always the first step toward meaningful change.